Well, this week, as you all know, it commemorated the 80th anniversary of one of the greatest military campaigns in history, D-Day. Allied forces from the United States, Great Britain, Canada, and other nations, numbering over 156,000 troops, stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, on June the 6th, 1944. That marked the beginning of the end for the Nazi forces. Within days of D-Day, over 325,000 troops would land on the shores of France in the largest air, land, and sea war action in all of history. It was almost another year of hard battles before Germany would surrender. But the Allied forces didn't throttle back, and they didn't enter into any agreements for a ceasefire that would give the Nazis more time to regroup. This week I wondered if Joe Biden and the people around him, if they've really studied D-Day, and if so, why on earth would they be pressuring Israel to do something that no successful military has ever done? Namely, to call a halt to the pressure on the enemy and even discuss allowing them to survive the war and continue governing the land that launched the horrific terroristic attack on innocent Israeli civilians. If Joe Biden had been president in 1944, would he have launched D-Day and then told Eisenhower to tell our troops, hey, put a pause in the action, and let's see if the Nazis will start acting nicer? For all the nations who want an end to the tragedies and human suffering in Gaza, which are, by the way, the direct result of Hamas butchering women, children, and elderly people, I got an idea, real simple. The war in Gaza can end in less than 24 hours. Here's how. Demand that Hamas unconditionally surrender, release all the hostages, and be prepared to stand trial for the atrocities inflicted upon the people of Israel, just as the Nazis had to face at Nuremberg. That's how you end it. From D-Day forward, the United States only intensified the war effort against the Nazis. It was unfortunate, but our bombs did kill thousands of German civilians in the intensive bombing of Dresden, Germany, back in February of 1945. An estimated 25,000 people were killed by the Allied bombing. But nobody suggested that we were the bad guys. Without such a show of resolve, of our commitment to win the war, the Germans would likely have continued to fight, and many more U.S. servicemen and German civilians would have died. Yes, it was unfortunate, but let's never forget that World War II was started by the Nazis, who proceeded to murder 11 million civilians, 6 million of them who were Jews. That evil had to be put down. Letting the German Nazis survive to keep running or even having a piece of Europe was never on the table. But the Biden administration seems to think that it's the Israelis who need to surrender instead of Hamas. Why don't we just make it clear to Hamas and their Iranian funders and their Qatari accommodators that Hamas has one and it only has one choice, that's it, surrender, and do it now. Or else, and if they don't, they'll face even more intense military campaigns to eradicate them. This is really a moment of truth for the United States. We're either going to stand with a trusted ally or we're going to stand with the bloodthirsty terrorists of Hamas. There is no middle ground. There is no compromise. The message has to be clear. Israel wins, Hamas surrenders. And further, this cowardly surprise attack on the civilians of Israel should never be rewarded with foolish talk of some unrealistic two-state solution. Those days have ended. There needs to be a sovereign state of Israel, and those who live within its borders will be under its authority and its flag. And if that's unacceptable, there can be an accommodation to assist those who want to leave Israel, and they can relocate to Jordan, Egypt, Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, or any other nation who thinks there ought to be a home for the Palestinians. So let's pray that Joe Biden acts more like FDR, Winston Churchill, and Harry Truman, and less like Neville Chamberlain. Because right now the world needs a Churchill who forces a surrender rather than a Chamberlain who is willing to surrender to the butchers.